The Mutiny of the Mavericks by Rudyard Kipling. Section 7.1. Cause conspiring with other persons to cause a mutiny, sedition, in forces belonging to Her Majesty's regular forces, reserve forces, auxiliary forces, navy. When three obscure gentlemen in San Francisco argued on insufficient premises, they condemned a fellow creature to a most unpleasant death in a far country which had nothing whatever to do with the United States. They foregathered at the top of a tenement house in Tehama Street, an unsavory quarter of the city, and there were calling for certain drinks. They conspired because they were conspirators by trade, officially known as the third three of the IAA, an institution for the propagation of pure light, not to be confounded with any others, though it is affiliated to many. The second three live in Montreal and work among the poor there. The first three have their home in New York, not far from Castle Garden, and write regularly once a week to a small house near one of the big hotels at Boulogne. What happened after that, a particular section of Scotland Yard knows too well and laughs at. A conspirator detests ridicule. More men have been stabbed with Lucrezia Borgia daggers and dropped into the Thames for laughing at head centers and triangles than for betraying secrets, for this is human nature. The third three conspired over whiskey cocktails and a clean sheet of notepaper against the British Empire and all that lay therein. This work is very like what men without discernment call politics before a general election. You pick out and discuss, in the company of congenial friends, all the weak points in your opponent's organization, and unconsciously dwell upon and exaggerate all their mishaps, till it seems to you a miracle that the hated party holds together for an hour. Our principle is not so much active demonstration that we leave to others, as passive embarrassment to weaken and unnerve, said the first man. Wherever an organization is crippled, wherever confusion is thrown into any branch of any department, we gain a step for those who take on the work. We are but the forerunners. He was a German enthusiast, and editor of a newspaper from whose leading articles he quoted frequently. That cursed empire makes so many blunders of her own that unless we doubled the year's average, I guess it wouldn't strike her as anything special had occurred, said the second man. Are you prepared to say that all our resources are equal to blowing off the muzzle of 100-ton gun or spiking a 10,000-ton ship or on a plain rock in clear daylight? They can beat us at our own game. Better join hands with the practical branches. We're in funds now. Try a direct scare in a crowded street. They value their greasy hides. He was the drag upon the wheel, an Americanized Irishman of the second generation, despising his own race and hating the other. He had learned caution. The third man drank his cocktail and spoke no word. He was the strategist, but unfortunately his knowledge of life was limited. He picked a letter from his breast pocket and threw it across the table. That epistle to the heathen contained some very concise directions from the first three in New York. It said, "The boom in black iron has already affected the eastern markets, where our agents have been forcing down the English-held stocks among the smaller buyers who watch the turn of shares. Any immediate operations, such as Western Bears, would increase their willingness to unload. This, however, cannot be expected till they see clearly that foreign ironmasters are willing to cooperate. Mtny should be dispatched to feel the pulse of the market and act accordingly. Mvrcks are at present the best for our purposes. P.D.Q." As a message referring to an iron crisis in Pennsylvania, it was interesting, if not lucid. As a new departure in organized attack on an outlying English dependency, it was more than interesting. The second man read it through and murmured, "Already? Surely they are in too great a hurry. All that Dulip Singh could do in India he has done, down to the distribution of his photographs among the peasantry. Ho, ho! The Paris firm arranged that, and he was no substantial money backing from the other powers. Even our agents in India know he hasn't. What is the use of our organization wasting men on work that is already done? Of course, the Irish regiments in India are half mutinous as they stand. This shows how near a lie may come the truth. An Irish regiment, for just so long as it stands still, is generally a handful to control, being reckless and rough. When, however, it is moved in the direction of musketry firing, it becomes strangely and unpatriotically content with its lot. It has ever been heard to cheer the Queen with enthusiasm on these occasions. But the notion of tampering with the army was, from the point of view of Tehama Street, an altogether sound one. There is no shadow of stability in the policy of an English government, and the most sacred oaths of England would, even if engrossed on vellum, find very few buyers among the colonies and dependencies that have suffered from vain beliefs. But there remains to England always her army. They cannot change except in the matter of uniform and equipment. The officers may write to the papers demanding that the heads of the house guards, in default of cleaner redress for grievances, the men may break loose across a country town and seriously startle publicans, but neither officers nor men have it in their composition to mutiny after the continental manner. The English people, when they trouble to think about the army at all, are, with justice, absolutely assured that it is absolutely trustworthy. Imagine for a moment their emotion on realizing that such and such a regiment was an open revolt from causes directly due to England's management of Ireland. They would probably send the regiment to the polls forthwith, and examine their own conscience as to their duty to Erin, but they would never be easy any more. And it was this vague, unhappy mistrust that the IAA were laboring to produce. "Sheer waste of breath," said the second man, after a pause in the council. "I don't see the use of tampering with their fool army, but it has been tried before, and we must try it again. It looks well in the reports. If we send one man here, you may bet your life that other men are going too. Order up Mulcahy." They ordered him up, a slim, slight, dark-haired young man, devoured with that blind, rancorous hatred of England that only reaches its full growth across the Atlantic. He had sucked it from his mother's breast in the little cabin at the back of the northern avenues of New York. He had been taught his rights and his wrongs in German and in Irish on the canal fronts of Chicago, and San Francisco held men who told him strange and awful things of the great blind power over the seas. Once, when business took him across the Atlantic, he had served in an English regiment, and, being insubordinate, and had suffered extremely. He drew all his ideas of England that were not bred by cheaper patriotic prince from one iron-fisted colonel with an unbending adjutant. He would go to the mines if need be to teach his gospel, and he went, as his instructions advised, PDQ, which means with speed, to introduce embarrassment into an Irish regiment, already half mutinous, quartered among Sikh peasantry, all wearing miniatures of his Highness Dulip Singh, Maharaja of the Punjab, next to their hearts, and all eagerly expecting his arrival. Other information equally valuable was given him by his masters. He was to be cautious, but never to grudge expense in winning the hearts of the men in the regiment. His mother in New York would supply funds, and he was to write to her once a month. Life is pleasant for a man who has a mother in New York to send him £200 a year over and above his regimental pay. In process of time, thanks to his intimate knowledge of drill and musketry exercise, the excellent Mulcahy, wearing the corporal stripe, went out in a troop ship and joined Her Majesty's Loyal Musketeers, commonly known as the Mvrcks, because they were masterless and unbranded cattle, sons of small farmers in County Clare, shoeless vagabonds of Kerry, herders of Ballyvegan, much wanted moonlighters from the bare, rainy headlands of the south coast, officered by O'Moores, Brady's, Hills, Kilreys, and the like. Never to outward seeming there was more promising material to work on. The first three had chosen their regiment well. It feared nothing that moved or talked save the colonel and the regimental Roman Catholic chaplain, the fat Father Dennis, who held the keys of heaven and hell, and blared like an angry bull when he desired to be convincing. Him also it loved because on occasions of stress he used to tuck up his cassock and charge with the rest of the merriest of the fray, where he always found, good man, that the saints sent him a revolver when there was a fallen private to be protected, or, but this came as an afterthought, his own grey head to be guarded. Cautiously as he'd been instructed, tenderly and with much beer, Mulcahy opened his project as such as he deemed fittest to listen. These were, one and all, of that quaint, crooked, sweet, profoundly irresponsible, and profoundly lovable race that fights like fiends, argues like children, reason like women, obey like men, and jest like their own goblins of the wrath through rebellion, loyalty, want, woe, or war. The underground work of conspiracy is always dull, and very much the same the world over. At the end of 6 months, the seed always falling on good ground, Mulcahy spoke almost explicitly, hinting darkly in the proof fashion at dread powers behind him, and advising nothing more nor less than mutiny. Were they not dogs, evilly treated? Had they not all their own and national revenges to satisfy? Who in these days would do aught to 900 men in rebellion? Who, again, could stay them if they broke for the sea, licking up on their way other regiments only too anxious to join? And afterwards, here followed windy promises of gold and preferment, office and honor, ever dear to a certain type of Irishman. As he finished his speech, in the dusk of a twilight, to his chosen associates, there was a sound of rapidly unslung belt behind him. The arm of one Dan Grady flew out in the gloom and arrested something. Then said Dan, "Mulcahy, you're a great man, and you do credit to whoever sent you. Walk about a bit while we think of it." Mulcahy departed elate. He knew his words would sink deep. "Why, the triple-dashed asterisk, did you not let me belt him?" grunted a voice. "Because I'm not a fat-headed fool, boys. 'Tis what he's been driving at these 6 months. Our superior corporal, with his education and his copies of the Irish papers and his everlasting beer. He's been sent for the purpose, and that's where the money comes from. Can you not see? That man's a gold mine, which horse Egan would have destroyed with a belt buckle. It would be throwing away the gifts of Providence not to fall in with his little plans. Of course we'll mutiny till it's all dry, shoot the colonel on the parade ground, massacre the company officers, ransack the arsenal, and then, boys, did he tell you what next? He told me the other night when he was beginning to talk wild. Then we're to join with the ends and look for help from Dulip Singh and the Russians, and spoil the best campaign that was ever this side of hell. Danny, I've lost the beer I have given him the belting he requires." "Oh, let him go this a while, man. He's got no constructiveness, but that's the egg meat of his plan, and you must understand that I'm in with it, and so are you. We'll want oceans of beer to convince us, firmaments full. We'll give him talk for his money, and one by one all the boys will come in, and he'll have a nest of 900 mutineers to squat in and give drink to. What makes me killing mad is his wanting us to do what the ends did 30 years gone. That's and his pig's cheek in saying that the other regiments would come along," said a Kerry man. "That's not so bad as hittin' we should lose off on the colonel. Colonel be sugared. I'd be soon as not put a shot through his helmet to see him jump and clutch his old horse's head. Mulcahy talks of shooting our company officers accidental." "He said that, did he?" said Horse Egan. "Something like that, anyways. Can't ye fancy old Barber Brady with a bullet in his lungs, coughing like a sick monkey, and saying, 'Boys, I do not question your getting drunk, but you must hold your liquor like men. The man that shot me is drunk. I'll suspend investigation for 6 hours while I get this bullet cut out, and then,'" continued Horse Egan, for the peppery major's peculiarities of speech were well known as his tan face, "and then, ye dissolute, half-baked, putty-faced scum of O'Connor, man, if I find a man's so much looking confused, begad, I'll court-martial the whole company. A man that can't get over his liquor in 6 hours is not fit to belong to the Mvrcks." A shout of laughter bore witness to the truth of the sketch. "It is pretty to think of," said the Kerryman slowly. "Mulcahy would have us do all the devilment, and get clear himself some ways. He wouldn't be taking all this fool's trouble in spoiling the reputation of the regiment into reputation of your grandmother's pig, said Dan. Well, and he had a good reputation too, so it's all right. Mulcahy must see his way clear out behind him, or he'll not have come so far, talking powers of darkness. Did you hear anything of a regimental course-martial among the Black Bonings these days? Half a company of 'em took one of them new draft and hanged him by his arms with a tent rope from the third-story veranda. They gave no reason for doing, but he was half dead. I'm thinking that Bonies are short-sighted. It was a friend of Mulcahy's, or a man in the same trade. They'd a deal better had taken his beer, returned Dan reflectively. Better still had handed him up to the colonel, said Horse Egan. Unless, but sure the news would be all over the country, and give the regiment a bad name. And there'd be no reward for that man. He but went about talking, said the Kerry man artlessly. You speak by your breed, said Dan with a laugh. There was never a Kerry man yet that wouldn't sell his brother for a pipe o' tobacco and a pat on the back from a policeman. Praise God, I'm not a bloomin' orange man, was the answer. No, nor never will be, said Dan. They breed men in Ulster. Would you like to try thy taste of one? The Kerryman looked and longed, but forbore. The odds of battle were too great. Then you'll not even give Mulcahy a strike for his money? Said the voice of Horse Egan, who regarded what he called trouble of any kind as the pinnacle of felicity. Dan answered not at all, but crept on tiptoe with long strides to the mess room, the men following. The room was empty. In the corner, case like the king of Dahomey's state umbrella, stood the regimental colours. Dan lifted them tenderly, unrolled them in the light of the candles, the records of the Mavericks, tattered, worn, and hacked. The white satin was darkened everywhere with big brown stains. The gold threads of the crowned harp were frayed and discolored, and the red bull, the totem of the Mavericks, was coffee-hued. The stiff embroidered folds, whose price is human life, rustled down slowly. The Mavericks keep their colors long and guard them very sacredly. Victoria, Salamanque, Toulouse, Waterloo, Montjuic, Frusca, and Sobranon. That was fought close next door here, against them the very beggars he wants us to join. Inkerman, the Alum, Sebastopol. What are those little businesses compared to the campaigns of General Mulcahy? The mutiny, think o' that, the mutiny, and some dirty little matters in Afghanistan, and for that and these and those. Dan pointed to the names of glorious battles. That Yankee man with the partin in his hair comes and say as easy as having a drink. Holy Moses, there's the captain!